So I'm sure by now we've already seen it. There's countless tier lists out there that have a few specific characters in the S tier, or pro players posting, tournament placements and showing how many specific S tier characters are being placed, in the top 50, top 100. So I thought it'd be a cool idea to actually, do a deep dive into this and see what makes these characters so strong. And those characters in those lists or on those tournament placings, they're usually guys like Ed, Rashid, Akuma, Bison, Cammy, Ken, and Zangief. Now, in my opinion, the great thing about Street Fighter 6 is there's tons of strong characters. I mean, we've seen big tournaments where Ryu has won or Lily has won, and they're not really considered to be, the best characters in the game. But in my opinion, there is a big difference between the S tier characters and the rest, and I think the number one way to determine if you're an S tier character is to look at the thing that I created called the S tier triangle. And I know, it's such a creative name. So this is that beautiful triangle I was talking about that I had to hijack my niece's Canva account to make, and believe me, it took me way longer than it should have. I'm a complete noob when it comes to this stuff. But the reason I love this triangle analogy is because it's something that comes from sports. In sports, they always say you need 2 out of 3 big elements to win a championship or to have a good team. And I think the same thing happens for S tier characters in fighting games. And in Street Fighter 6, I broke that down into 3 areas as well. So if your character has at least 2 out of the 3 areas over here, chances are you got an incredible character on your hands. And those 3 areas come down to your character's overall toolkit, how well they use the in-game system mechanics, and then the wild card. Do they have an X factor or a meta-breaking mechanic? So the overall toolkit is very simple for me to explain. It's just how many options does your character have available and how good are they? Do they have elite normals? Do they have high-end supers, high-end specials? Are they best in class in their archetypes, or are they best grappler, best zoner, things like that? And obviously, to be a good character in any fighting game, you need to have a good toolkit. So up next is system mechanics, and every single fighting game you play these days is going to have its own unique system mechanic, and normally they should benefit every single character, but unfortunately, some characters are just going to have more use or utility than other characters. You can look at things like FADC, for example, in Street Fighter 4. It's something that helped every character. It made all your specials that you could FADC out of safe. You can extend combos, but obviously, especially if you play the older versions, you know that some characters definitely got more advantage out of FADC than others. Same thing in Street Fighter 6. Everyone benefits from, drive rush and drive impact, but we all know not every drive rush is built equally. Look at DJ or Bison. And then finally, the fun one, does your character have an X factor? So the X factor is essentially, do they have that one mechanic that's either unique to them or only a handful of characters that have it, that is very cheap, very broken, or it just flips the meta of the game on its head completely and it forces you to play a different game altogether. I always use the example of Cable from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. On his own, Cable is still a very strong character and he's very annoying, he can zone you out, and he can really pester characters from far away. But if you compare him to the other top tier characters from that game and you say you're not allowed to use supers, Cable versus Magneto, Storm, Sentinel, the characters that can fly or maneuver quickly are going to be better than him. But Cable has a very big X factor. His air hyper viper beam comes out anywhere from 0 to 1 frames. It's extremely fast, it's extremely strong, but because he has that X factor, he can hang with the gods in that game. So the first character to enter into the triangle is Ed. And I'll be honest, I've seen Ed at the top of basically every tier list now, especially in the Japanese tier list. And for someone that's mained Ed for all of last season, I do agree that at the top level, Ed is definitely going to be in the S tier, but only in a pro's hands, because I do think he does take a lot more execution than some of the other pro characters. So when looking at Ed's overall toolkit, I definitely think that he has this place covered. In my opinion, his normals are arguably the best in the game, if not, top 3, top 5 of the entire game. He has one of the best 5-frame punishes in the game with his crouch light kick. He has fireballs, invincible anti-airs, he can do drive rush off a low. He has throw loops. Basically, he is very good because he has such a good toolkit. But also, he's best in class in a certain area. For example, in the mid-range, in my opinion, no one in the game can fight Ed in the mid-range as well as he can fight them. And for that reason alone, Ed definitely gets 1 point for the overall toolkit. The next area for Ed is how well does he use the in-game mechanics. And surprisingly, I don't think Ed benefits from the drive system as much as other characters. And don't get me wrong, he still has some good uses for it. Like his drive rush fireball is strong. His drive rush quickly stopping into doing the flicker is a very good tool to pressure people or to throw off their timing. But his actual drive rush speed and things like that, they're only just average, and his combo extensions are pretty standard as well. So even though he does get some benefit, I can't give him the full point here, so he gets half a point. So the last area, does Ed have an X factor? Drum roll please. Of course he does. And we all knew it, and I'm sure many of us have been hit by it a million times, but the elephant in the room, he has one of the best supers in the game, and that's his level 2 super art. Having a level 2 that's better than your level 3 is already such a huge boon in this game because 1, it's much faster to build 2 bars than 3, but you also get multiple level 2s a game, and in Ed's case, it also has a lot of utility. It has tons of corner carry, does excellent damage, it builds meter, and it's just one of those things that your opponent has to know that basically anytime Ed hits you, he can combo into it, and not every level 2 can do that as well, so Ed has tons of ways to combo into it. But the level 2 is not the only X factor Ed has. I truly believe that his flicker attack is a crazy game changer in this game. Not only does it flip the meta in its head because no other character has anything like this and it's very unique compared to the other moves in the game, but it gets Ed the chance to dictate how the match is going to go or how that particular moment of the match is going to go. When he starts charging his flicker, you're going to get a reaction from an opponent. If they get hit by it, they're going to eat a big damage combo, but if they get grabbed and sucked in by it, they're in a really bad spot. Your opponent is +4, they're going to hit you with some, dirty meaty setups, they might just throw you, but the strike throw mix-up is real once Ed brings you in. And it's one of those moves that truly skips neutral in this game. I know what people like to say that, drive rush is the only thing that skips neutral. I would put Ed's flicker into that as well. It goes through fireballs. If it's charged in, it'll blow right through them. And it's one of those moves where you have to respect it as soon as you see Ed start charging. And to me, it's definitely an X factor. And believe it or not, I'd actually give Ed's kill rush a bit of an X factor as well. Not that many characters in this game have a command dash that, is invincible from the top. So, if an opponent jumps and you try to get out of the corner, you can actually get out of the corner. But the fact that he doesn't have to waste drive bar in a lot of situations to actually get a meaty follow-up or a tricky strike throw situation all off of kill rush is a big boon. And that's what makes him really good with meter management. So in conclusion, Ed gets 1 point for his overall toolkit, half a point for how he uses the drive mechanic in this game, and he definitely gets a point for his X factor level. That gives him 2.5 out of 3, which means his elite status is 100% justified. Alright, up next is a character that I'm sure we've all seen plenty of. It's M. Bison. So let's see how M. Bison deals with the triangle, and I don't think this is going to surprise anyone. First off, with the overall toolkit, yes, Bison definitely gets a point here. He has an incredible toolkit. I would say the only thing that's missing for him is a true invincible reversal, which is big, but let's be real. If he had that, he'd probably be the best in the game. So right now, he has insane normals, elite specials. His anti-air game is very underrated, and he can set up into, bomb situations, so he definitely has some crazy options out of that. But to me, Bison gets an easy point here. On top of that, he's such a fast and elusive character. He's got crazy air maneuverability, so you always got to be on your toe. So easy point for Bison here. So next up, does Bison actually use the in-game mechanics well? And surprise, surprise, of course he does. His drive rush is insanely fast, which means that he's always going to have, very strong pressure and ulti game. And honestly, if your hands aren't warmed up and Bison's drive rushing at you, there's pretty much nothing you're going to be able to do. He's too quick. On top of that, perfect parry helps him a lot because in old Street Fighter games, he would always struggle versus fireball characters, but now he's got a solid option to fight them with that. And because his normals are so strong already, the fact that he has a fast drive rush into, some of his stronger normals, he's going to be very plus. He's going to be setting people into tons of frame trap situations. And just in time for his release, he also got the drive reversal, which helps him have a, an invincible reversal. Is it as good as a invincible DP? No, but it's better than nothing. So Bison definitely is laughing when it comes to using the in-game mechanics. So that's another point for Bison. And then the final area, does Bison have an X factor? Do I really need to go on with this one? Of course he does. First off, right off the bat, his damage is incredibly good, especially for how easy it is to get that damage off. And there are characters like Marissa that can do more damage than him, you know, in a vacuum. But when it comes to, you know, consistent damage or getting off that tricky type of damage, Bison just blows her out of the water. But the real X factor, in my opinion, is the bomb. The bomb is so powerful in this game because once it's stuck on you, Bison completely dictates how the rest of that, you know, interaction is going to go. I know there's other types of mechanics like Kimberly's spray can or Blanca's blanket chance, but those are stationary to the ground. Something that's actually attached to you that's going to detonate is a whole different ball game. So once the bomb is on you, especially if you're in the corner, you're as toothless as you can get in this game. And the worst part is, if he actually hits you with a Psycho Crusher that detonates it, he can get you with another bomb. So you're right back in the mix. And that type of X factor that really flips the meta on its head is another big reason that Bison's at the top. So if you're keeping score at home, Bison gets a whopping 3 out of 3 when you look at the S tier triangle. Now, before anyone comes in and says he's not the best character in the game, that's fair. Just because you have 3 out of 3 over here doesn't mean that you're better than a character like Ed or Akuma because they don't have a 3 out of 3. Because they might do one of those areas much better than Bison. For example, Ed's ground game might push him over the top. So just because you have 3 out of 3 doesn't mean you're the best, but it means you're hella good. And I don't think anyone's going to deny that. And now for everyone's favorite demon, Akuma. And I'm just going to come out and say it, and I know people are going to hate me for it, but as long as Akuma is in a Street Fighter game, in my opinion, he needs to be top tier. I know it makes no sense for me to say that, but it's just for the lore. If Akuma's not good in the game, is it really a Street Fighter? You gotta treat some of the OGs with respect, right? So does Akuma get a point for the overall toolkit? Obviously. He has everything from elite normals to elite specials, so that's no surprise. But in my opinion, he has the single best toolkit in the entire game because there's not a single situation that he doesn't have an answer for, whether it be offensively or defensively. Not everyone has that privilege, and because he has low health, which is not a very big, you know, trade-off in my opinion, they're going to give him those options. On top of that, in my opinion, he's the best zoner in the game, so he's already best in class at one thing. So Akuma is very tough to deal with. As for in-game mechanics, much like Ed, I don't think Akuma gets as much mileage out of, you know, the drive system as other characters. Don't get me wrong, he still has super annoying things like Drive Rush Fireball, Drive Rush Overhead, you know, a Drive Rush Crouch Light Kick into big damage, which not a lot of characters have. But it's not, you know, the main thing that's going to make Akuma tick in this game, or he's heavily dependent on it like other characters. So that's why in this area, I'm only going to give him half a point. And finally, does Akuma have an X factor or something that really just flips the meta on his head? And I'd say yes. Back in the old games, you know, his big X factor were either going to be his air fireballs or his vortex, and you just had to deal with them. But in these games, now that air fireballs have been nerfed, they're still very good, but they're not as good as they used to be. And vortex is nothing like what it used to be back in the day. He still has a couple X factors. The first is his fireball game. So the reason this is good is because not only is he arguably the best rushdown character in the game, because his fireballs are so strong, he's actually able to be the best zoning character in the game as well. And that's very unique because not many characters are able to, you know, flip the script and just be one or the other. And I know we've all been in this situation where we're loading up a match and we're facing off against an Akuma, and we think to ourselves, is this going to be a zoning Akuma or a rushdown Akuma? Because he can play both styles, and not everyone can do that. And the other thing that makes Akuma a very annoying character with an X factor is that his corner lockdown is by far the best in the game. I already mentioned fireballs, like he can lock you down for days, but because his walk speed is so good, both forward walking and backwards walking, it just makes his frame traps, his throw games, everything just gets amplified. So if you're in the corner against Akuma, you're in big trouble. And on top of that, I know characters like Cammy have excellent walk speed as well, but they can't hit like Akuma. So if you're in the corner against Akuma, you gotta be on point, otherwise you're eating 40% damage combos like it's nothing. So easy point for Akuma here. So for all those keeping score at home, Akuma gets 2.5 out of 3. Is he elite? You knew he was going to be. And he should be. So now is another elite character that pros always mention. It's Rashid. And you're not going to really see Rashid much like in Battle Hub or rank mode depending on, what your rank is. And I think the reason for that is that he, like Ed, is just a very hard character to use compared to, some of the other S tier characters. But I definitely think that after we see some of his toolkits, you're going to see why he belongs there. So first, for his overall toolkit, surprise, surprise, Rashid does get a point here. And honestly, if you're on this list, chances are you're going to get a point for your overall toolkit. You need that to be a good character, and that's no exception for Rashid. And what makes Rashid so good is that, in my opinion, he is the single best tricky rushdown character. And what I mean by that is characters that have crazy mixes. You don't know what they're going to do, whether they're bouncing off the wall, hitting you with tricky high-lows, running behind you. I think Rashid does that by far the best in this game compared to, other characters that can do it. But he's also so slippery to get a hold of. Like, he's always moving, and you feel like you have to make your opportunities count when you're fighting him because you don't know if you're going to be able to catch him again. And the other thing is he has projectiles and effective anti-airs. He's got great supers, so Rashid definitely gets a point here. So when it comes to how well Rashid uses the in-game mechanics, again, a lot like Ed and Akuma, there are characters that use them better than he does. Not to say he doesn't have utility, like he has got some great normals out of drive rush that can be very annoying. When he activates his level 2, drive rushing in and out pairing, all that stuff will play a role into it. But if you watch Pro Rashid's play, they're very good at not using their meter because he has so many options that don't require drive rush to do stuff. And a lot of elite characters actually fall into that category. The fact that they can preserve their drive meter for big opportunities like going for kills or saving it for defensive options really is what sets them apart from a lot of the low tier characters. So for that reason, I give Rashid half a point here. And finally, does Rashid have an X factor? No, I don't think he does. I think he's perfectly fine. Obviously he does. Level 2, we've all been there. We've all just felt the dread of that super closing in on us in the corner. It's the best super in the game. Yes, better than every level 3, better than every level 2. It's incredibly powerful. It's very hard to balance. Even when they take away things like meter building, it's very hard to balance. But it's such a powerful super, and it completely changes how the game is played once it's activated. And it doesn't matter what character you are, you need to know how to, defend against it. And if you don't, Rashid's going to pop off 2, 3, maybe 4 of them in a game. And you know what? If something can flip the meta on its head like that, it's going to get a point here. Another point for Rashid. So that takes Rashid to 2.5 out of 3. And we all know that makes you an elite character. So up next is Zangief. And let's be real, there's tons of discourse online about people that just want this character nerfed. So let's see if it's justified. So first of all, for the overall toolkit, I think it's very safe to say that without argument, Zangief definitely gets a point here because first off, he is best in class when it comes to grapplers, and it's not even close. I mean, his competition is not that great with characters like Manon or Lily, but the fact that he's best in class and he still has, very good normals that can help him be annoying with it, Zangief definitely gets a point here. So does Zangief get any mileage out of the in-game mechanics? And I'm here to tell you, he gets some of the best mileage in the entire game, so he gets an easy point here. Think about it this way. What are the 2 biggest things that have plagued grapplers since the beginning of time? One, it's mobility, so them getting in to try to actually grab you. And the second thing is they have to deal with fireballs. But now, thanks to the drive system, both of those are taken care of. Now Zangief can drive rush forward on your wake up, he can drive rush forward in neutral, and he can set you up with some dirty situations. Maybe he'll give you a frame trap, or he'll hit you with a meaty situation that'll go into, another Oki situation. None of this was possible in previous Street Fighter games. Also, now that he has access to perfect parry, characters that try to zone him out or lame him out, if he has his perfect parry timing on point, he could really close the gap in on you. So Zangief, 1,000,000% gets a point here. The in-game mechanics help him a lot more than they hurt him. Now finally, does Zangief have an X factor? Drum roll, I know a lot of people are going to get mad here. I don't think so. And I know people are going to say, when he has access to level 3, you got to deal with it. But let's be real, in Street Fighter 6, anytime a character has a level 3, you got to respect it. A crouch light or a crouch jab can go into 3,000, 4,000 damage. So level 3s, you just universally in this game, you got to respect. But I don't think he has anything that, flips a meta on its head. Yeah, we have to play grapplers a certain way, but you're not going to be playing a grappler different than you would, another grappler. And I think for Zangief in this game, if you're rushing them down, this is probably the easiest game in in a long time where you can actually rush down a grappler like Zangief. So I really don't think he has an X factor, so I'm going to give him 0 points here. And if you're keeping score at home, that takes Zangief to 2 out of 3. Is he the best character in the game? I don't think so, but I definitely think he's in the conversation for an S tier character. Up next is everyone's favorite millionaire hobo, Ken. Does he deserve the elite status? Well, if you're watching this video, obviously he does. But the overall toolkit, he definitely gets a point here. He's solid both offensively and defensively. And in my opinion, he's the best in class when it comes to consistent corner carrying. And his corner carrying is not only good because of how far it carries you, but it just leads you into another blender situation. And I think it just really suits Ken's game plan. The other thing in this game, because of stuff like Drive Rush Fireball, his Fireball, which is normally by far the weakest of all Fireball characters in a game, is very useful and has a lot of viability. So Ken definitely gets a point over here. So does Ken benefit from the in-game mechanics more so than a character like Akuma or Ed? And honestly, I would actually say yes here, because I think the way that Ken's game plan is in this game and how all of his momentum is forward momentum, the drive rush system definitely plays a role for him. And because in old games, he would struggle against Fireball characters, the fact that he has access to perfect parry and whatnot lets him be more patient in the zoning game. And it also lets him use that to his advantage as well, because Drive Rush Fireball is an incredibly strong tool that not every Fireball character gets to the same level as Ken. He can combo into, a max damage combo from 3/4 of the screen away if he gets a good read on you. So for that reason alone, Ken definitely gets a point for how well he uses the in-game mechanics. And finally, does Ken have an X factor? Honestly, I'll probably get flack for this, but I'm going to say no. There's nothing he really has that's like insanely egregious, but he's just elite at pretty much everything. So that's why you're always going to see him near the top for a very competitive character. And I think to actually have an X factor, you have to have something that's so obnoxious or something that really just flips the meta on its head. And the closest thing he'd probably have is his EX Fireball Drive Rush, but even that, I would rather deal with that than like Bison's Bomb, 10 times out of 10. So do I give Ken a point here? No. So that takes Ken's score to a 2 out of 3. Still an incredible character and totally justified for S tier. Now up next is Cammy, the character that just won Evo. And so we all know she's good and she's an elite character, but the question is how elite? And believe it or not, I hate myself for saying this, like no joke. I actually want to kick my own ass for saying this, but I think of all the S tier characters, Cammy might be the most fair. And oh man, that sounds so bad to say. But anyways, she is, in my opinion, still an incredible character, and she is cheap. There's tons of characters that she just totally erases, especially in the corner if they can't deal with her walk speed and her normals. But she doesn't do as much damage as the other characters, so you know that for her to beat you, it's going to take a few more interactions. And the fact that you have that punching chance makes me feel that, Cammy is not as cheap as the other characters. But let's be real, she's still incredibly good. So overall toolkit, obviously she gets a point here. Her normals are incredible. Her specials are great. They're tricky. They can set up totally different situations. She has command grabs, air throws, a lot of stuff that just works perfectly into her playstyle. Plus her walk speed is just deadly. If it wasn't for Akuma and we had to deal with that type of corner pressure, Cammy would have ran away with best in class corner game. But because Akuma exists, Cammy will be probably 2 or 3. But being top 5 in any category in this game is still very good. So easy point for Cammy in the toolkit. Cammy also gets a point for how well she uses the in-game mechanics. The drive system helps her a lot because, again, things like perfect parry, she used to struggle against characters that could zone her out, even though she had moves that can get around them. The fact that she doesn't have to deal with them, in a risky situation by using a special helps her a lot. And her drive rush game is also very good. Because her walk speed is so crazy and her normals are so good, she can set up crazy situations, have good combo extenders that'll take you very far into the corner, set up crazy meaty situations, tick throw situations. The drive system just makes an already fast and agile character that much scarier, so I totally give Cammy a point here. And finally, when it comes to X Factor, again, like Ken, I don't think she has a crazy egregious X Factor which just puts her over the top. Her level 3 is amazing that, once she has that stock, you got to be careful when you throw out fireballs. But that's like a once a game situation, maybe twice a game situation. And if your character doesn't have fireballs, you don't have to worry about it as much. And her corner game is still very good, but like I said, because we have Akuma, you're not going to be noticing it as much. So in the X Factor option, I am not going to give her any points. So that takes Cammy to 2 out of 3 points. We knew she was elite. So the final list will look like this. Bison is the only character in the game, in my opinion, that has a full 3 out of 3 here. Again, that doesn't mean he's the best character. I just think that he has all 3 points. Ed, Rashid, and Akuma have 2.5 out of 3. And Zangief, Ken, and Cammy have 2 out of 3. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you have 2 out of 3 of these areas, it's going to make you a very good character. So let me know if you agree or disagree with the statement. Maybe you think I should use a square or a hexagon instead of a triangle. I don't know, I'll look into anything. But like as always, I love getting the constructive feedback and criticism or just positive, vibes. Let me know in the comment section of how you feel, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out, everybody.